Thank you so much, Chamberlain. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Business Morning on Sunrise Daily. We do a bit of business here before we head back to those current affairs conversations. We begin, as usual, from the global space, where oil prices for today fell in early trade as investors are digesting the U.S. Federal Reserve. They are likely to push back on possible interest rates. It's now going from September to December, while ample U.S. crude and fuel stocks also weighed on the market. We take a closer look right now at the numbers for Brent. We see that it's a red 0.3% down, $82.37 a barrel, and WTI $78.30 a barrel. Of course, this also reminds us of Nigeria's crude. It was dropped according to OPEC, it's dropped for last month, a worrying one right there. So even if prices do rally, Nigeria can hardly tap into it. But driving this is the Federal Reserve of the United States. They held rates steady on Wednesday and pushed out the start of policy easing to perhaps late December. So it's not even for sure. Are we going to go through 2024 without any rate hike or rate cuts? We will see that. Higher borrowing costs tend to dampen economic growth and can, by extension, limit oil demand. On the supply side, U.S. crude stockpiles rose more than expected last week, driven largely by a jump in imports, while fuel inventories also increased more than anticipated, according to Energy Information Administration. Now we come back home to the Naira and see we're still having a bit of good news for the Naira. Appreciation is how the market closed 2 days ago. Yesterday was no trading. So we see that it closed at 1,473 Naira 66 kobo on NAFIM and 1,479 Naira 90 kobo, gaining 0.67 and 0.11 on June the 11th. So the Naira is still around 1,004. 1,005. We'll see how that is expected to hold this rate, at least for this period. We'll see how that goes. Now, the Chartered Institute of Bankers of Nigeria is reassuring Nigerians that the banking system remains very safe, sound, and resilient. This follows fears that the banking licenses of more banks would be revoked after the regulatory action taken by the Central Bank of Nigeria against Heritage Bank. CBN seeks to allay the fears of bank customers and the generality of Nigeria. That assertion is false and misleading, even as the Central Bank of Nigeria, which is the only body best suited to assess the health of financial institutions in the country, has debunked the claim. It is important to note that the Nigerian banking system, according to them, is built on strong foundations with rigorous regulatory frameworks and supervision aimed at safeguarding the interests of stakeholders and maintaining financial system stability. Now, as Nigeria celebrates 25 years of unbroken democracy, congratulations to all of us. Of course, as expected, the president did speak to Nigerians yesterday, and part of that speech yesterday was an assurance to protect Nigeria's democracy and to pass the wage bill to the National Assembly.
Continue to reform the economy. I shall always listen to the people and will never turn my back on you. In this spirit, we have negotiated in good faith and with open arms with organized labor on a new national minimum wage. We shall soon send our executive bill to the National Assembly to enshrine what has been agreed upon as part of our law for the next 5 years or less.
So, of course, there's been reaction from the organized labor. They've denied that there's been an agreed figure for a new minimum wage after the president said he was sending that to NASS. They say a compromise is yet to be reached between the 250,000 naira, which labor is asking for, and 62,000 naira from the government and organized private sector. State governments on their side have said that even 60,000 naira is not affordable to them and are asking labor to be realistic in their demand for a new minimum wage, saying that the relief Nigerians were expecting would not come only in the form of increase in wages. Now, let's delve into this conversation with the Chief Executive Officer of Financial Derivatives Company, Mr. Bismarck Rwani, to help us find perhaps a middle ground in this. Mr. Rwani, good morning. Happy Democracy Day, first of all. or it's not
Good
Democracy
morning.
Day, but at least 25 years of democracy. The president said democracy is now a way of life.
Thankfully so.
All right, what do we make of this? The president saying he's going to send a wage bill to the National Assembly, and Labour is saying we have not even agreed on a number. We see the difference in the proposal from the organized employers and Labour. Very different, 62,000, 250,000. So, I mean, I just wonder what the president would be sending to the lawmakers.
I don't know who the speech writers are, but definitely I think what the president is saying, or I believe he was about to say, is that after an agreement, he will send a bill to the National Assembly to make it pass it into a law. I'm not sure that an agreement has been reached. Usually, speech writers, the detail is in the devil is in the detail. The reality is that there's a hope that this thing will be resolved, that the negotiation will lead to an outcome. And when the outcome is now dimensioned, then both for its impact on the public sector, talking about subnationals, the states, the organized private sector, and the informal sector, because that's where most of the employees are. So it is not a relationship. It's not a bi-dimensional parties. It is between the federal government or public servants on one hand, and public service employees on the other. We are having a situation where it is organized labor, the federal government, the state government, the local governments, the private sector organized, and then the informal sector. As long as you employ more than 25 people, you are bound by law to pay the minimum wage. And failure to pay the minimum wage is an offense, punishable by 5,000 naira fine and 10,000 naira for every day, I think, that you do not comply. So the penalties are quite huge. So it's something that we need to consider as the total wages paid in the country versus the productivity and output of the people versus the welfare of the people. So, like Professor Suludo said yesterday, this is one of those questions where everybody is right. Labour is right, government is right, minister is right, and everybody is right. And when nobody is wrong, then there's no solution.
Yeah, well, I hope it will be, obviously, as the president said, more conversations and meetings that will not be, prolonged, because the level or the air of uncertainty also does things to investor sentiment and the market and all of that. But there's also another worry now for Nigeria, which is the drop in our crude oil production by more than 2%. I thought that the issue of oil theft was being dealt with, and I remember the NNPCL promised that we're going to be doing about 1.7, but it seems we're going farther away from the target.
Yeah, let me go back a little bit to the minimum wage issue, then I'll come into oil. The thing about the minimum wage is that it has very serious implications when you increase wages by a certain magnitude. Productivity is stagnant because of power and other infrastructure bottlenecks. And at the same time, you are compelled to begin to find out how to fund it, because an increase in wages without an increase in productivity, which is tantamount to actually printing money, has long-term implications for economic stability. And time is not on the side of Nigeria right now. So it's an emergency. Both the federal government and everybody has to come together to deal with this very quickly, or else it goes out of hand. Now, coming to the question of oil, the issue of oil is very simple. A drop in oil production is not necessarily as a result of oil theft. It could be a result of divestment. It could be a result of natural attrition. It could be a result of, force majeure. So many things are happening at the same time. But the truth is that 90 days from now, once there's an oil drop in oil production, 90 days from now it will hit your cash flow. And do not forget that we have also made some commitments to for some borrowings we took recently from the African Development Bank and others to say, look, gentlemen, this is our production, and we have actually projected pre-sold some of that oil. So if we do not produce, we are increasing our liabilities without an asset to make up for it. So I think it's important that we realize that while on one hand you are negotiating very carefully a minimum wage, at the same time our revenues are beginning to decline. Therefore, the affordability, the sustainability, and the implications on long-term macroeconomic stability are things to be seriously considered. And this does not call for an aggressive, combative environment. What we need to do is to come out here and credibly, I use the word credibly, get together so that people are seeing that, one, the government is serious, there's low, reduced ostentation and massive spending, and at the same time that, like I said, all along, that truth is in short supply in Nigeria. Both the people that are negotiating for and the people that are negotiating to receive must have national interest and come credibly to one another, so that the Nigerian people, who are the ones that are suffering right now, who are the casualties of this deadlock, will have to have some succor very, very soon. Because every day that passes, with food inflation reaching the height at which it is today, it's going to be a problem. That's what we should be talking about.
Talking about food inflation, Mr. Aruwani, the Salah holiday is around the corner. We see a lot of activities, and I wonder what's happening to domestic commodities, when there's more demand. So it's relatively elastic products. Could you take us through some of the movement? Looks like a mixed color here, even wheat is unmoved. What's happening with commodity prices at this time?
Now, what we've seen is there's been a spike because of Salah. I think Salah is Monday, Tuesday. But we've seen rice at 80,000 naira. We've seen tomatoes up at 150,000. And tomato is like gold now, 150,000 naira for tomatoes, so you can see that. Onions is up by 36% at 75,000. And pepper is up by 55% to 140,000 naira. What will happen after the Salah holiday, because is yet to be determined. But from what I gather from some friends of mine, a ram that used to cost about 40,000 is now as high as 300,000 naira. It was 30,000 naira maybe 5 years ago. It has gone up by, God knows, 1,000% to 300,000 naira. So, and this is the festival where they kill rams. So the rams are more expensive. The pepper, tomatoes, and onions and everything to use to you grill this, you spice it, and all of that, and use it. So it's going to be a very, very, very bizarre and I would have a very austere Salah this time, compared to last year, and more so compared to the year before that, which is 2022. So this is a tough one, and this is the time the currency appreciated marginally to about 1,485. This, we expect the currency to stabilize at around this area for the next week or two, about 1,500, as you can see in the NAFEM and NAFEX. So these are all the things that are driving this thing. And like we said yesterday, Tuesday, the projected inflation rate now is above 34% for May. And so we expect that this is a tough period, and that all hands should be on deck to ensure that we get maximum value from the output that Nigeria is producing at this time.
All right, all hands on deck. Mr. Bismarck Aruwani, Chief Executive Officer of Financial Derivatives Company, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Let's take a break now. When we come back, we're still staying on the minimum wage. It's the hottest issue in the country at this time, but that's after the break. Just stay with us. Welcome back to Watching Biz This Morning on Sunrise Daily right here on Channels Television. And it's that's a minimum wage issue. We've heard the state government saying that they cannot afford 60,000 naira, even though the federal government and the organized labor are proposing 62,000 naira. But we have another tier of government. What are they saying, the local government? What can they afford, or where are they in this conversation? We have the national president of Association of Local Government, Mr. Aminu Muazu Mai Fatah, joins us virtually from Lafia of Nasarawa State. Thank you so much for your time, Mr. Mai Fatah, and welcome to the program.
Good morning, and you are welcome too.
So tell us, what's the stance of the local government in this issue of minimum wage?
In this issue of minimum wage, locally, I was an observer in the tripartite committee with full privilege to make contributions. It was came to a conclusion on the government side and the organized private sector at 62,000 naira as minimum wage, while labor stood at 250,000 naira per month as minimum wage. There and then, I made it categorically clear that with the present allocation from FAC, no any local government council in Nigeria can be able to pay 62,000 naira, which is a mere fact for anybody to see. One, the 772 local government councils, as the large or big number as they are, receive only slightly above 18% of the total FAC of the Federation, while the federal government is receiving above 52%. So I said, at this present 30,000 naira minimum wage, or some could not even afford the 30,000 naira, still working on 18,000 naira, whatever was coming as inflow from FAC, presently 90% goes into salaries and pension. So if you look at it, it's telling us that without adjustment, without upward review of the percentage of allocation coming to local government councils, it will be extremely difficult, or I can say impossible, for local government councils to even pay 62,000 naira minimum wage. So my plea there was, even I say, let the labor agrees on this 62,000 naira, and then allow us, the local government councils, which glaringly cannot be able to pay the 62,000 naira, but we know where to run to. We were lucky, the chairman of the governance forum was there, so I said, as our principals will always run to you for one augmentation or the other, and we also run to the federal government when this is 2,000 naira or any amount to be agreed between the federal government or the government side, the organized private sector, and the labor, whatever amount agreed, we have, and it becomes, when it becomes law, it has been passed by National Assembly, enacted, then we have no reason not to comply with it. But in order not to run foul of law, we say we must go to our principal, that is the governors in this, on one side, and the federal government on the other side, to augment whatever will be accruing to local government councils in Nigeria from FAC, so as to enable us attend to our obligations. So we have not, as local government councils in the country, we have not set any figure that this is what we can afford, looking at our financial constraints, always and only relying 98% or 99% on FAC. But we are waiting for whatever the outcome from Mr. President that will go to the National Assembly and then will become minimum wage as an act, then we'll work with it. But I also put it to them that local government councils have a lot of responsibilities on their head, like provision of basic health, provision of basic education, provision of sanitary aspects in the council. We have pension and gratuity. We have security at every level, provision of rural roads and potable drinking water and other rural electrifications. There are so numerous, overwhelming on local government councils. So this have to be looked into as to arrive at affordable minimum wage. We don't want something that we can start and cannot be sustained.
All right, Mr. Maifata. There are people who say that, as at other tiers of government, perhaps the issue of productivity of the staff should also come into play here. Perhaps in some cases, there's the issue of overstaff and ghost workers. Maybe if the local governments will look into these areas, about how many staff does a typical local government office need? How many do they have? Maybe from there we can prune the expenses and we'll be able to accommodate more or higher figures.
Yeah, the data is there. We have like about 5 basic departments in each local government council. But the unfortunate thing is past administrations or administrators at the local government in almost all the local government councils overflooded the workforce. You see, an engagement that requires one hand, you see about 50, 80 hands on that engagement, leaving majority redundant, just collecting salary at the end of the month. If we are to tackle this, it will affect a lot of families. I am being frank now. It will affect a lot of families. So many workers will have to be laid off, which will not all go well for the economy again. But as we are managing, there must be a time, just like what the immediate past governor of Kaduna State did, El Rufai, by looking at the needful, the exact required number that each local government is supposed to have. He did that analysis and came out with all the excess staff with the option of being paid off with handsome amount of money that will enable a staff being laid off or voluntarily resigning will have enough capital to start one business or the other that can sustain him for life. With that, he was able to reduce to the sizable number that local government councils can afford or can sustain. And this is really paying off. You see Kaduna local government councils with a lot of surpluses, with a lot of money at their disposal after paying salaries to execute projects. But almost 95% of local government councils in Nigeria, apart from this that I just mentioned, Kaduna, like Lagos, like Kano, and at times I can say Borno, Delta, and other rich states, only few of them are not only salary-paying institutions. After payment of salary, they are always left with nothing to undertake other basic and obligatory activities.
All right, Mr. Mai Fatah, thank you so much for sharing the perspective of local government with us on this issue of the new minimum wage. And as you said, just as you are watching, we are watching and hoping that the union and the government, states and federal, will have, well, an agreeable result at the end of the day. Mr. Aminu Muazu Mai Fatah is the National President of Association of Local Government of Nigeria, ALGON. Thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome.
All right, we only have just a couple of seconds, less than a minute, I believe, to do the market, how the market closed. 2 days ago, all share was down 0.16%. Equities is still around 56 trillion naira after the market lost 93 billion naira at the close of trade. Activity was mixed, mostly red. And top gainers, Total, Presco, a lot of things happening in the oil and gas area. So if you're an investor, a potential investor, perhaps you want to look at top losers, NASS, Thomas Way, and May and Baker. We'll give you more at 1 p.m. Ladi Williams will be here with Anete Edet. They'll give you fresh market numbers that you can make a decision with. I'm John Mekwa. Let's head back to the Sunrise Daily Studios.